Give me that. Give me that. Give me that.
Pal, welcome back to another episode of the Sume Elevate podcast. Before we begin, I want to wish everybody listening a happy new year. And to those listening, I recommend this book, Power of Your Subconscious Mind, and it combines spiritual wisdom as well as cutting-edge scientific research. Read it, audiobook it, I don't care. I'm here reading it too, so let me know what you think of it. And as we know, as Splash Lifers, our subconscious is ideal to lasting happiness and tapping into our individual success. The inner world reflects the outer world. And we have a very, very special guest with us today, Mr. Elliot Hulse, one of my longtime role models. Growing up, strong man, meditator, YouTube celebrity, self-proclaimed king, as well as holistic life coach. So it's an honor to have you with us today here, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So how are you doing, brother? Happy New Year.
Thank you. I'm doing really well. Loving life, man.
That's awesome. So you said that your resolutions for this year was impeccable self-mastery. Talk to me about that. What does that mean for you?
Well, it has less to do with following rigid guidelines or having goals set in stone, and more of truly just honoring what my inner guidance is offering me in the moment. Of course, I have my intentions, but really following the intuition rather than forcing.
Great. So I know a little bit about your background, but for the people listening, let me know what made you want to be a coach to begin with.
I think the first time I saw myself as a coach was when I began training with my uncle. And when I was about 14 years old, he made his way back into our lives, and he would train my brother and I in how to lift weights. And as I was developing myself, and I saw how joyful it was for him to see us developing, I just envisioned and visualized myself as doing the same thing for other people as I grew up.
Yeah. That's really awesome. So what made you start going into this personal development journey to begin with?
When I was younger, I would often be asked, Elliot, what are you? And the reason why that question comes is because my parents are from Belize, which is a country where many different races mixed. That's our history.
Yeah.
So, I'm part African, I'm part European, and part Native. And growing up in a suburb of New York City where everyone kind of, for the most part, everybody knows who they are and what they are. You're black or you're white.
Yeah.
And when people asked me that question, I didn't have an answer for that. And so little did I know that it was embedding itself deep into my unconscious. And when I turned a teenager, I found myself in the philosophy section of a library one day, reading a book called, and it was written by a philosopher and quantum physicist.
Sorry, could you repeat the name of the book?
I think it's Man's Search for Himself, or
Man's
Who
Search.
Are You? But it basically was answering the question that I was often asked. And it led me into the realm of quantum physics and spirituality, the world of the infinite intelligence, possibility, God.
That's amazing. So you're a very valuable tool for the future. And what made you really start this YouTube journey? You just picked up a camera one day and you said, I'm going to do this thing.
Well, I own a gym, and I wanted to get more clients into my gym. And as a trainer, I figured that the best way to do that would be maybe to record some of the workouts and get testimonials from my clients. And I started putting up those videos where we were working out on my YouTube channel. And of course it worked. They showed their friends, and their friends would come in and they would work out with me. But little did I know that people from around the entire world would be seeing them. And so it snowballed from there.
Amazing. So as you've kind of evolved from a boy growing up to a man to an older gentleman, what kind of changes have you noticed? What kind of in your own personal power and your ability to transform not only yourself, but the lives of so many people you've come in contact with. What have you noticed has been the shift in you over time?
Well, there have been tremendous shifts throughout our entire lives, and each one of those shifts causes a death and a rebirth in our in our character, and that leads to wisdom. So I think that a part of our reason for being here is to accumulate wisdom, and that can only happen through experience. So one of the things I like to subject myself to, offer to other people, is to make as many experiments out of your life as you can. You know, have no reservations. Be willing to try anything, because through that trying, we get experiences. Even if we fail, it leads to wisdom.
Yeah. So you said something very interesting. I don't remember if it was from one of your videos, but you said that every relationship also goes through transitions, just like we go through life. And I think that's incredibly true. I've noticed that. And so what has helped you to maintain your relationships, to powerful relationships with other people around you?
Well, one of my teachers says that all of our relationships are a mirror reflection of our consciousness. So whatever's happening in our relationships has to do with what's happening within us.
Right.
You know, and a lot of times there are people that will come into our lives at the right time. And sometimes they've been there forever. They've always been there, but you didn't notice them because we just weren't ready. It's not until our consciousness is ready, is prepared to receive that person, that a relationship could even be formed. It's funny, one of the comments that I often get in my YouTube videos is, Elliot, when I first watched you, I hated you. I couldn't stand you, and I turned away. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, 2-3 years later, I came back, and all of a sudden, wow, it's like, and then they develop a relationship with quote unquote me in the videos. Yeah. And so it's not that I changed, and oftentimes in our lives, it's not that the people around us change, it's that we change and we evolve. And as long as we're getting closer to the strongest version of ourselves, we're evolving in wisdom, then either the people around us are going to be enlightened by that glow of your increased wisdom, or they're gonna be turned off by the light, and they're gonna go scurry back into the darker place where they're more comfortable with you. So relationships is really a matter of attraction. Yeah,
great. So what are some rituals that you do before, say, you're about to teach, or you're about to get in front of a camera, or you're about to coach a student through their workout, or you're about to captivate a room full of people? What are the rituals that you do to get yourself into that state?
Well, when I was making lots of YouTube videos, I would do deep breathing exercises, bioenergetic breathing, and that would open up my ability to express myself. So, but now I don't make too many videos any longer. I don't do much coaching any longer. I spend most of my time by myself and with my family now. Yeah. So I don't really have any current rituals. I guess if I were to begin getting back into the practice of presenting and speaking, maybe I would do it again.
Great. So you spoke of bioenergetics. How did you get into that? How were you first introduced to that, and how did you choose to implement it into your practice, into your coaching?
I was introduced to bioenergetics by a woman that actually introduced me to dynamic meditation, Osho dynamic meditation. I was about 24 years old. I was going through a little bit of a depressive spell, and I knew that meditation would be good, but I had been reading the works of Osho, and he spoke of a different type of meditation, a much more embodied meditation that included movement and breathing. And I thought it sounded fascinating. I wanted to give it a try, so I did a 21-day workshop with a woman who also held one-on-one sessions, and I loved the dynamic meditation so much that I decided to hire her for a one-on-one session. And in that session, we did bioenergetic breathing and catharsis. The promise was that you would strip away layers of muscular tension that hold back our truest selves. Because the ego shows up in the muscular system. The things that we do with the body, they become unconscious. in as neurotic holding patterns, most of which keep us breathing shallow. So I thought it sounded fascinating. I gave it a try, and it was exhilarating. And so I spent a lot of time studying the work of Alexander Lowen and Wilhelm Reich, and have been use it and teach it today.
That's really fascinating, man. So, if you want something to manifest on the outside, you have to have a discipline internally. So you said one of the things that you do is deep breathing, and kind of find out a way how to tune our body's instruments. So, do you have any bioenergetic techniques that you want to share with us today for our audience? Just something to get them to wake up for the day, or something that...
Active meditations are probably definitely a better place to get started, because it's just more available to most of us.
Right.
And the best way to really allow yourself to get into an active meditation, which basically means using the body and breathing in order to transcend the ego, is to turn on music and go wild with it. Turn on mostly a song that you already know, that you can yell and scream and move just like a little kid would do.
Right.
And just allow yourself to have the fun. That's very accessible to most people. Just put on music and dance with reckless abandon. Just silly. Move your butt, shake your body, shout, just be silly. That's another one. Be silly. Children know how to be silly. They'll just shake and make weird sounds.
Yeah,
they're doing that. They're literally shaking their ego off, because you can't be thinking about taxes and your diet. You can't be thinking about all kinds of shit when you're shaking your head and you're wobbling around and gibbering. You know, that's actually an Osho active meditation to just. You walk around for 15 minutes just moving your body and talking like that. You go completely sideways. You can't be linear. You can't be logical.
Right.
And that is a break for the ego, which
fantastic.
Is defined as a meditation. Break for the ego.
So when someone is doing this and they feel a sense of resistance, or they feel a block come up, it's about them pushing past it, right? It's about them being present with that. And seeing what does come up, or is it just a process of just letting go completely?
Well, the very first thing to do is just to have compassion with yourself when you see it, and to recognize it for what it is. Every single one of our blocks are a defense mechanism, and they're there for a reason. They protect us from a perceived threat that maybe we experienced when we were younger. And there's no need to judge it, or to call it bad or be angry about it or anything. But just look at it, and when I say have compassion, it literally means shedding some love in the direction of yourself, saying that this is okay, and maybe analyze it a little bit if that's helpful to you. But then, like you would in seducing a woman and seducing yourself, just ease into it and be a little bit gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
Be fun with yourself, too. Just have fun.
Yeah. You spoke about something that has kind of stuck with me over time. In one of your videos, you mentioned the word tender aggression. And I love this word because of the contrast, and it's very holistic as well. So, in what ways did that cultivate for you? How did that sense come up that you needed to have both this compassionate side as well as this aggressive, this fierce side? And maybe, I'm guessing, I don't know, but maybe it has something to do with the yin and yang, or maybe it has to do with also the energy of a complete human being. Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't say it any better.
All right.
Complete being.
Absolutely.
Carl Jung says that within every man there's a woman, within every woman there's a man. We see the manifestation of a penis and a vagina, but at the intangible level, at the metaphysical level, we are all one thing. So there's power to the femininity, there's power to the yin, there's a power to the darkness. to the yielding, to the stillness aspect of everything in the world. You know, I like to point to, I always see in my computer, they've got the power symbol is the 0 and the 1
Right.
And it literally looks like penis and a vagina. It literally looks like, you know.
I haven't thought of that. That's great.
Yeah. Because all power, sex power, it's sex energy. So when you press that 0-1 button, it's like you're having sex right there, and it turns on the computer.
Yeah.
So when we're tender in ourselves, we're tapping into
on double entendre. Yeah.
Sex energy. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's our true sex energy. If we're overly aggressive, overly yang, overly hot, we miss. We're overly passive, we're overly soft, we're overly yielding, we miss. So there's an integration.
That's really fascinating. So we live in a world of images, right? And language also creates images. But primarily we live in a world of images. In a way, what are some of the images that goes through your mind when you're training, when you're working on yourself, what are some of the visualizations that help you in order to grow?
Well, one of the best things to do, I found in my experience, is to keep around me symbols that empower me. So, for example, on my desk here, even right next to me, I have a candle right here. I have an image right here.
Right.
It's a reminder of me that I'm not alone. I have the element here with me. It's a reminder of the light that we're shedding when we have conversations like this. It's a reminder of the spark that I've come into the world to bring this fire about. You see?
Yeah.
Then I have a picture of Hanuman over there.
Fantastic.
Downstairs, I have a picture. Yeah. I've got all kinds. I have the picture of the Kiss by Gustav Klimt, which I actually have a tattoo of here. Wow. I surround myself with images that empower me, that make me feel good. That remind me of who I am.
Yeah. I love how you're so interested in the symbolic. Do you know where that came about? You spoke of Carl Jung earlier, but you also work a lot with archetypes, and so how did that first begin, that journey into symbolism and for you and this sense of metaphor?
I think I was introduced to the idea of spiritual metaphor and spiritual symbolism from the Baha'i faith, and furthered through studying the work of Joseph Campbell. Yeah. And it has to do with because I grew up as a Christian in a Christian society. You know, people take the words literally, and so that causes a lot of attachment, and it causes us to miss the point completely. Yeah. And so, and I was introduced to the idea that these are stories that represent deeper unconscious truths that are happening at a spiritual level. Then I began to understand the wisdom of all of our literature from our ancestors. I just listened to the Bhagavad Gita once again. Yeah, and so these are stories, whether or not they're historic. Maybe it is. I don't know, but it's irrelevant if it's historic or not. The truth that's being given forth in the symbols that our ancestors afforded us with these stories is ever present and is always available. The essence of it, the truth of it, the power within it is always available to us. So this is, you know, I told you what this represents to me, but really, I took a friggin', it's just that. Yeah. Back to the power that I wanted to have. It's not the spark that represents me and the light that's in the world. It's a candle. But because I infuse the power of my consciousness, it takes on a brand new meaning to me.
That's great. I don't know if you resonate with this idea of life being a game, that we have these, and I know maybe from Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero's journey and all of that is inspiring. We have an obstacle, we have opponents, we have a prize, and we like this game, we have to make up our own rules. And so, as you said in one of your videos, we operate on frequencies. And I've been listening to binaural beats just like you. I've trained myself, I've made it a ritual for myself to listen to these sounds, these frequencies. And they really change my entire being. Like for me, it's like the feeling that time stops and nothing else matters. It's just me and that. It's like I'm floating almost. So, what are some things that you do for you to really, besides binaural beats, to really have that freedom, that sense that time stops for you and nothing else matters? What gets you really into that flow state for you?
Well, frequencies and rhythms are kind of, they're kind of the same thing. As if you look at a frequency, it's this rhythm. It's just going up and down. And I found that in my life, if I maintain certain rhythms, when I go to sleep and when I awake, when I eat and when I use the bathroom, when I meditate and when I exercise, that if I maintain these rhythms, I maintain the pulsation that keeps me on my path. So it's like we're listening to the vibrations, but all of our actions, all of our activities, all of our thoughts are vibrations.
Absolutely.
So trying to make rituals that keep me on the path, and honoring, when you asked me before about self-mastery, honoring the seasons that dictate certain changes instead of trying to fight against seasons or fight against my intuition, knowing that there's a pattern, there's a rhythm, but also there is an evolving rhythm and pattern.
Absolutely. And the universe provides us with kind of the perfect mathematics. Everything has ups and downs and waves and rhythms. And as the Hermetic principle says, everything is vibration, right? And so in your game, in Elliot Hulse's game, right, what are your transitions? How do you merge games with other people? How do you invite players? Let's work on this metaphor a little bit. So winning the game, if there is winning, there might be a level where winning and losing might be an illusion. But let's say you make the rules for your game, and it's about also offering people a better game. Look at my game compared to yours. So sometimes we say that comparison is bad, but also it's about reconnecting with what is authentic to us. So when kids are running around and they're screaming their heads off, right? You have children, and they're having so much fun. They're playing this game. And then when you tell them, okay, let's not jump up and down for a second. Let's just run. We just start running with them. Now we're changing the game. We're changing the rhythm. We're changing the frequency from up and down to running. And then after a while, so what you're doing is you're offering a better game. You're offering a different game. And through that, it keeps changing. Everything keeps changing. So my question to you is, say, working out. For me, working out isn't the main goal. It's working on my life and my mind. And because of that change in the state of mind, working out is a byproduct of me feeling good. So what is something that motivates you to stay focused on the bigger picture of life?
Well, it depends on your definition of the bigger picture, because for a lot of people, the big picture is what they see in front of them, their responsibilities, their family, their job. And that is a very important part. I'm very much dedicated to the growth and the support and the joy that I can bring into my family and to the work that I do. But all of that is ephemeral. All that, in other words, passes away. All that goes away at some point. It changes. There's one thing that changes. There's the eternal truth. There's God. There's the universe. There's unified field. However you want to describe it.
Yeah.
So as far as the big picture is concerned, most of the pictures that we're playing with right now, like you said, is a game. So if I'm going to play the game, I want to get the most out of the game. I'm not interested in checking out of the game. I want to play the game. I want to have a good time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to be attached to what is true and what's eternal, what's everlasting. Because when this body passes away, or the things that I pass away, or the people around me pass away, I don't want to be left confused and lonely. That's all that it does.
So, in terms of Strength Camp and your legacy that you're leaving behind, right? You've split it up into 4 different layers and it's interesting how you linked them to the warrior, the magician, the lover, the king, right? So, how did that idea spark? First, maybe by Robert Moore's book, I'm guessing. But how did that really fuel you into creating these pillars of strength?
Well, 4 layers of strength came about before I was introduced to Carl Jung and Robert Moore.
Yeah.
So I just saw them as different aspects of becoming the strongest version of ourselves. From such a young age that I'm not just this physical body. There's much more to it. I realized that there's a physiological component to it, which is tangible. There's much more fluid, the nervous system, the hormones, and the digestive system. And those things we don't do with our ego. Those are things that happen, some would say God does it for us, but they're unconscious. These are things that our vegetative nervous system, our autonomic nervous system takes care of. So there has to be the first layer of strength. We go one step further. There's
Sorry,
the ghost
could you repeat?
machine.
Could you repeat the last thing you were saying? It was kind of cutting off.
Well, the first layer of strength being the neuromuscular system, is also highly influenced by physiological strength, which is guided by the autonomic nervous system, meaning we don't do anything for it. It does itself. We don't build muscle. You go to the gym, you're not building muscle. Your muscle builds when you go to sleep.
Right.
And that has to do with deeper layers of being our strongest selves. Now, we don't make that happen. We're not in there constructing tissue, but the choices that we make about the building blocks that we support our physiology with, meaning food and rest, play a tremendous role in your body's ability to do what it does without us having to do it. And then a layer beyond that is energetic strength, which is very much tied to our emotions and our thoughts. Abraham likes to say we have an emotional guidance system. Our body is constantly talking to us about what's happening at the soul level. And then when we get into the 4th layer of strength, the life mastery, that's really your link to spirituality. It's your link to the biggest picture of all. And so we could put legacy in there with that, because when we pass away, all that's left are our vibes.
Right.
What vibrations sent out.
Absolutely. That's incredible. So, in noticing, kind of reflecting back now for where you started and where you came from, what are the biggest takeaways from growing up, from understanding yourself deeper? What are the biggest takeaways that have helped you really get to where you are now?
Well, that my thoughts affect my physiology, and my physiology affects my body, and my body is the tool by which I approach the world, and everything that I'm doing with this tool is it affects my circumstances.
Right.
So it all begins with thoughts. It all begins with mindset. Where am I? And with the emotional guidance system, I know whether or not I'm in alignment, if my thoughts are in alignment with truth, or if my thoughts are discordant with truth by how I feel.
Yeah. So, in terms of really being in this state where you are really seeing unavoidable circumstances, you're seeing people around you suffering, or you're getting into arguments, or someone is imposing their reality onto yours. How do you... Basically, my question to you is, if an obstacle comes up, what is the best way that you approach it?
I always ask, what is the lesson in this? What am I being shown? What am I being taught? Mm-hmm. Where is the gift in this? Because there's a gift in absolutely every... I'd like to say that every wound is a womb. And I've got a lot of wounds.
I love that.
Yeah, what is a womb? Opportunity. A womb is where something grows, where something new is coming about. Yeah. So whenever these circumstances show themselves as negative, I immediately want to think about the polar opposite and say, well, what is the actual positive in this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's available for me now that wasn't available before? And sometimes you got to dig deep. You know, you end up in prison. You have a lot of time to think now. Okay, what's the lesson in this? Yeah. How am I growing through this? Why, mm-hmm. Instead of judging it as good or bad, it's an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. You spoke about the idea of duality in one of your videos, and it really sparked something in me, because I haven't heard the term before used in this way, of really light and dark, and what is good, right, compared to something else, it's not as good. So it's like this constant shifting of everything is different but to varying degrees. And what is heat but the absence of cold, and vice versa. So understanding this, how is this concept helpful to you, or has been helpful to, how has it been helpful to you in your journey?
If you're talking about relativity, that has everything to do with perspective.
Right.
So, yeah, absolutely. It has to do with where you're coming from with regard to the circumstance. You can call it good, like, so for example, Wallace D. Wattles in his book, The Science of Getting Rich, talks about equal trade and fair trade. And he says that if you were to take a painting that in any civilization, modern civilization, would be worth thousands of dollars, like this painting is worth $70,000, and you bring it to an Eskimo in Alaska, and you try to trade him for some of his furs for this. The furs are maybe worth, $10, and you trade him this painting, he's going to be like, relatively, that's useless to him.
Yeah.
This is a bad trade.
Right.
But if you were to go to someone in New York City and trade that painting for the furs, yeah, kidding me? Instantly, because of the perspective, the entire circumstance, the relativity of the circumstance changes. Right. Mm-hmm. So knowing that, and knowing that we're not just these physical beings, recognize that what looks like it's good is just perspective, and what looks like it's bad is just perspective.
Right on. Yeah, also I think when we speak of good, we don't know how good something is until we start categorizing, right? And then we start comparing it to what is better than this, and what is better than this. You're right, it's completely context based. So always I think of a context, a construct, how it's made, how it was created, and the content, what does it contain, right? And always I remind myself of these 3 C's, and it's been so interesting in that it has shifted my perspective every time. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That word perspective is very important. And so, to our listeners listening, I want to end this podcast with something that's very out of the ordinary. Something that will kind of wake people up and tell them and remind them, like, this is not your average moment. Okay, so do you have a quote or a message, a statement, anything that you want to gift the listeners of this podcast to leave with?
Yeah, well, I think that we live in the time of the rising sun, and I think that's difficult for a lot of people to hear, that we're living in the age of enlightenment. We're living in the age of waking up. We're living in the age that all of our ancestors and teachers from the past, this is the advent of the awakening of humanity. And no matter how dark it seems to look, based on what we see in the media and the quote unquote horrible things that are happening in the world, I am of the strong conviction that we are on the way up, and that we who are alive today, who are breakers and bringers of the dawn, are the people who are more blessed than any generation ever to be able to witness and to facilitate this process.
Absolutely. All right, you heard it here first. Upward Spiral Gang. Let's make this an amazing new year. Thank you for being on this podcast. Have an amazing high vibrational day. And peace out.
Peace out.
Thank you, man. Bless.
You got it,
Bless
brother.
up.
Well.